behalf of the Church Langley residents, on the 28th of March 2019, I presented a question to Cabinet. You replied in full detail of what the funds were used for in Church Langley. I decided to present a question again at full council on the 4th of March in regards to when the plan was to spend the actual money. On this occasion, my answer was very vague, and I could even say a deflection away from the question that I presented. To this outcome, to the full council meeting, I resulted in a petition on the behalf of the residents of Church Langley. I feel this is the only way that we could go forward to address the issues that we face. On the 11th of April, I had a meeting with our street scene manager and showed Mr. Grundy around all the issues and the areas of Church Langley. After meeting and many follow-up emails with no reply, and one of the emails was even copied to the chair themselves of the details of the meeting with Mr. Grundy. On the 6th of June, this time, I got a reply from our street scenes manager, and he was consequently informed that almost, if not all of Church Langley was actually none of Harlow Council's responsibility. At this point, it was also pointed out that the developers still hold most of the land, and if not, it was down to private homeowners. So there is many areas that the developers have left. The point here is the money that was left by the council, by the developers for the council, to maintain the areas around Church Langley. It doesn't matter who owns the land, the money is set aside for these exact purposes. Some of the private homeowners are unaware that they own this land. So can we not do the works for these homeowners and then inform them at a later date that this is their land? This will help with the maintenance around Church Langley. I would also like to point out, I have done many walks around with the residents of Church Langley, and would like to point out we now have a health and safety issue across the whole of Church Langley, and it is of great concern. Also walking around with our residents and our community, which many of them have disabilities that range from being blind or wheelchair users. It is almost impossible to navigate without having a fall or being injured in any way. So, also our growing elderly community, which find it impossible to even get on a bus without falling or even getting cut by trees.
Can you sum up, please?
Yeah, of course I can. We have a problem with the fencing, the overgrown bushes. We need to address this now, not at a later date, especially at 10,600 to be spent over 40 years. We need it to address now.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the petitioner because she's quite right in raising this. As I said at the last meeting, it certainly needs to actually be spent, but not all of it, because it needs to be also protected. Harlow was in a unique position with the Development Corporation in 1979-80 when it was wound up. And the land in the new town was actually given over to Harlow, whereas Church Langley was in Epping Forest at the time and was in the hands of the Countryside Partnership. They never made the land over to Harlow Council when they left it in the hands of the residents, but endowed the council with over £400,000, which I think should have been spent over the years. It's remarkable that local councillors haven't taken up the challenge. But nevertheless, there's a report tonight before us, the entire report, and I think it arises because of, quite rightly, the pressures recently that have actually been drawn to this issue. The council officers have actually drawn up a scheme, a remedial scheme, to the value of £133,000, and that's actually on the appendix, and it's actually itemised there. And as has been said, there have been walk rounds, there's been lots of consultation. I believe certainly Councillor Carter has actually been involved in this as well. And so there's quite a lot of work that we can actually authorise tonight, and we can actually get on and do this. But we will need £10,000 per annum for 40 years, which in my calculation would take us to 2049, which I'm sure some of us might be here to see. And then the council, presumably, and the local residents would then have to pick up the bill. If there are other schemes, if residents can come forward, this isn't a normal. I think Church Langley is comparing itself with the Development Corporation area of the town, and that's not fair, because in that particular sense, that land is in the ownership of Harlow Council. Perhaps if Countryside Partnerships actually made that land over to Harlow Council, then we could have actually reviewed that. But as I say, the report is there are the issues, but the main issue is sustainability. We've got to actually keep some of this money back to make sure that Church Langley, once these works are done, then they're actually properly maintained. Thank you, Chairperson.
Councillor Davis, please address you as Chair, not Chairperson.
If you look at standing orders, it says Chair or Chairperson.
Excuse me, Councillor Davis, that your group changed it from Chairperson to Chair 2 years ago.
Look at the standing
Not
orders.
once. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair.
Turn the microphone on the side.
On behalf of my Church Langley colleagues, we'd like to express our appreciation to Mrs. Peirce for her tenacity and commitment in bringing this petition to the Council, which has not been an easy task. It does provide the opportunity for us all to debate this long outstanding and contentious issue. Petition represents the anger and frustration felt by hundreds of residents in Church Langley at the Council's failure to maintain their landscape, many of whom are here tonight. I'd like to correct Councillor Evans on quite a number of issues of what he said. But the primary issue is the agreement in 1987 was a land transfer issue, which was the bridleway, the playing field, the verges, and all and the bund were transferred to the ownership of the council along with this endowment fund, and that's what the money is there primarily to look after. But I'll come back to that in a moment. The petition is not a sudden knee-jerk reaction to what may or may not have been going on this year. There's a clear pattern of obfuscation and delay by the council in spending Church Langley money from Church Langley. One can only wonder why. Chair, this is not an opposition inquiry to be put on the too difficult pile. It is a ward issue solely affecting money left for Church Langley to be spent in Church Langley. It's also relevant to mention, we'll go much further, that in 2006-7 and 7-8, the Labour administration managed to remove a total of £440,000 from the Church Langley Infrastructure Fund in order to fill black holes in their budgets. Was this carefully profiled expenditure as explained in the report? Fortunately, Conservative administration soon came along and topped it up afterwards. Now, there have been many requests over the years for work to be done in Church Langley from the councils, which have been ignored with no reason. So in October 2017, the Scrutiny Committee added to its work plan a scoping report for review of the Church Langley Fund. The scoping report was due in March 2008. Come March 2008, not only was there no report, sorry, 2018, not only was there no report, the entire topic had mysteriously disappeared from the work plan. with no reference to the committee. Sorry, I don't have 5 minutes more. Thank you. No explanation was given at the meeting for that disappearance, apart from the offer of a meeting. Several chases were then made before a meeting was made with the head of place, which resulted in a number of site visits to develop a schedule of works and costs. But that was last year. Also last year, another meeting took place to review the money. Later, that officer went on compassionate leave. When officers were chased for follow-up to these meetings, we were told there was no time as the council's year-end took priority. So by the end of last year, having started in October 17, the trail went cold. We were flogging a dead horse. The report says there's been ongoing work with officers and councillors since the autumn of last year to identify a programme of works. Chair, this is a very interesting comment. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. There have been no meetings at all with councillors since that time. So why make it up? In March of this year, Mrs. Peirce raised the questions at Cabinet and at Council. The answers maintained the Council's intention to do nothing. In the answers, we were informed that footpaths and play areas should be maintained for 15 years. However, in the same answer, it says that the infrastructure fund is to last 50 years, and the present balance can only provide £13,000 per annum. No evidence was provided for this 50-year assumption. And then in tonight's report, there's a reference to the next 40 years. A lack of clarity there, consistency. But, that's a very big but. The 50 years or the 40 years would start from the date of the agreement, and not some arbitrary date in the future. The agreement was signed in 1987, 32 years ago, meaning there are only 17 years or 7 years left of the 40 or 50 years. And as the petitioner has pointed out, nothing has been spent for over a decade, so there is a lot of catching up to do. It's worth pointing out that much of the intended work is to remove dangerous thorns and brambles and thereby reduce ongoing maintenance costs, which will then make a fund last longer. Much has been made of how complicated it all is with different land ownerships. So what has the Council done to identify owners and resolve the issues, such as transferring ownership? Where land is still in the ownership of developers, they have already paid hundreds of thousands of pounds, which the Council has not spent in 33 years. But Chair, there is a risk that developers, if we go and start asking too many questions, would be well within their rights to demand a return of their money, which has not been spent for its intended purpose. An issue not mentioned in the report is that of adoption. The fourth item on the proposed list is dealing with surface drainage on the bridleway. The bridleway, a public right of way, is the responsibility of Essex County Council. So has the Council approached Essex for them to deal with the issue?
Councillor Carter, can you finish up, please?
I am. So, Chair, you can understand our scepticism in making anything of tonight's report, which is why I would like to move the following recommendation, which I believe is round the table. This Council establishes a working group comprising residents, ward councillors and officers to investigate in all urgency, to review and confirm the detail of the proposed one-off works, review the entire 1987 agreement to put the alleged extracts into context and to identify the period of the fund, to review the historic activity of the fund to identify the careful profile of expenditure required for the future, and monitor implementation of the agreed works. Now, as I said, time is of the essence on this. We've now got this far. I don't want to waste any more time.
3 minutes.
I move.
Seconded. 3. I've got it here. Did they?
It's not been seconded.
I've seconded it. I'd like to formally second it if you're giving me the opportunity to reserve my right to speak to this debate. Personally, I'd like to hear what the administration has to say to the motion.
Point of order, Chair. Can I ask how long the time limits are for people's teaching contributions?
I think it's fabulous.
No according to the standing orders, it's not.
16. Or we could have debate about standing orders.
I just think it's an awfully long 5 minutes. There we go.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the petition. I appreciate the detail that Councillor Carter's gone into. When I spoke to Councillor Carter on this, it must have been a year ago now, and when I met some Church Langley residents on a litter pick, what struck me was the need for some urgency with actually getting on and doing this, getting the work done. I don't think anybody denies that there is a backlog that needs to be filled. It says as much in the report. And my understanding is that the proposed works here, which come to £133,400, that list arose as a result of a number of meetings and a number of walks, and my officers have told me that there is broad agreement that these are the works that need the most urgent attention. My fear about Councillor Carter's amendment to the recommendation is that it will bog us down into yet more discussion and will actually delay the implementation of the work. We want to get on with it. We don't dispute that there is a large sum of money that needs to be spent to deal with the works in the list. And this recommendation is that we do exactly that, but hold back enough to continue to maintain Church Langley into the future.
Thank you, Chair. If no one else is willing to speak on this, as a Church Langley councillor, I certainly want to. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Person, the residents of Church Langley, for organising this petition and bringing it. It was organised after a ward meeting with councillors where we shared our level of frustration, and the timeline that Councillor Carter has outlined included the number of emails I've shared before this meeting with the Managing Director. A number of emails that have gone unanswered or unresponded to by this council. The fact that, as Councillor Carter says, this was put on a committee work plan and officers agreed to write a report on this and bring a report back. And then not only was the report not written, it was deleted from the work plan without councillors' agreement. Something hinky has been going on here, Chair, and it's about time that it was dealt with. I don't believe Councillor Ingall's correct that setting up a working group, but looking at the details of the funds stops us doing these works. But as someone that's been copied into all of these emails and involved in a number of conversations about this since back in March and August 2018, this is the first time I've seen the details of the work plan that's been proposed, and the details of the work plan are one-line top-liners with no specific detail. I can match back to the very detailed list that the residents of Church Langley have helped compile of exactly what needs doing, street by street, ward by street by street, and house by house in some cases. So I certainly do think that that list needs to be reviewed in detail by someone, and it needs to be reviewed by people that know it, such as leading members of the community, like us, such as Councillor Scott, or myself, the ward members, and indeed the officers that put the list together. I don't think moving and agreeing Councillor Carter's motion tonight stops us implementing the work plan and spending the 113,000 that you're proposing to spend. 133. Certainly nowhere near what needs to be spent and what the residents have asked for in their petition. Like you said, you think the residents do know their area pretty well. I think I've also got a concern, and one of the reasons I want to support Councillor Carter tonight is that he wants to review the individual extracts of the 1987 agreement, something that, despite asking for, we have not seen over the last few years. In fact, haven't seen over the last 10 years that we've been looking for them. So we've heard tonight, and we've heard a few months ago, that suddenly this fund should last 50 years. Tonight I'm being told it should last 40 years. As Councillor Carter said, this fund's been in existence for 32 years, and very little has been spent. Just how long does it say in the legal agreements should this fund last? Personally, given everything that's happened, all of the toing and froing, all of the non-spending of the money and all of the evasion by the council of spending the money, I'd like to see those documents for myself and share those with the residents so that we can all be assured how long the fund should last for and how much need there is for this to be protected in the future. So, Councillor Engel, I think I'll be voting for Councillor Carter's recommendation tonight. I hope that doesn't mean that you say that the money won't be spent. I hope that means that 133,000 will be spent straight away. In fact, I hope that more money will be implemented by using this motion tonight. The works are desperate. As a resident of Church Langley, does that mean I have to declare an interest? No, because the interest is no more than that, the residents sitting over there. As a resident of Church Langley, I see and hear every day about people getting caught on brambles, about people's lives being inconvenienced by some of this landscaping work, the dangers of the kick rails falling over by the side of the roads, the dangers that it causes to children crossing roads and those with disabilities. And I point to a video that Nikki produced with the help of a gentleman, I'm sorry, I can't remember the chap's name, who is visually impaired. Is it Ricky? Ricky. And Ricky is visually impaired, and he went out with Nikki to walk some of these areas that are impinged by these landscape overgrowths. And it was frightening, the difficulties he had getting round in his daily life. That's why I want the money spent. That's why I want the works agreed. And that's why I'll also be supporting Councillor Carter's motion.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I must admit I wasn't going to, but I'm becoming quite frustrated, and I suspect a lot of the members of the public are coming here and are getting frustrated, and we've fallen into the trap of local government that actually we talk more than we act. The people of Church Langley have asked a simple question. They have come with a simple explanation which is easy to understand and easy to resolve. The leader of the council has made a commitment that we will deliver these actions that have been agreed by the residents and by our officers, because we have to do something. But please, let's not get into this dogma of let's sit down and form a working party and let's sit down and review and confirm the details. Let's just get on with it. These people deserve better from this council. We're giving them better, and I hope we can just get on and do what the leader of the council has said and stop all this nonsense about sitting down, reviewing, talking, etc. They need action, we need action. Let's get together and let's make a difference. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Carter, do you want to...
Right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. It's disappointing that we haven't got the message across that a lot of work has been going on in identifying work to be done. You come along with an offer and say, yes, we'll spend £135,000. We've got no idea what it is you want to spend the money on. How do we know? If you were, with respect, Councillor Durkin, if you were aware of all the work that's gone into preparing for this, all the alleyways have been walked by, all the water courses that have been followed, all the trees are identified, land ownership are identified, there's an incredible amount of detail, and that's what the issue is, the detail. We've got no idea, there's been no... I did say on one or two occasions, despite what the report says, there have been no meetings with councillors since last October or since last autumn. So how do we know what's in there? And some of these issues are not relevant. Why are we looking to spend money on drainage on the bridle way, which is the responsibility of Essex County Council? What steps has the council done? Yes, of course we've got to get on. We've been waiting the last 10 years. But do what? That's the issue. What is it you want to do? Is it actually what is on the list? Is it a priority? And are there some bits you're not doing, which we want doing? And why aren't you doing it? Thank you.
the motion to vote, please?
The amendment, yeah?
Amendment, yes?
There's no amendment. There's no amendment. It's the only motion on the table.
It's a recommendation in accordance with sound rules.
So it's a recommendation which you move to amend.
No, we haven't. There was no recommendation on the officer's report.
Chair, with respect, I move the report that we have.
No recommendation.
The only motion before the Chamber is not the Council Park.
That's our point. That's why we were waiting for you to say what you want to do. We've moved the motion.
Let's start with the motion. Who is in favour of the motion?
It's not usually like this.
You want the work doing? I know. Absolutely. Not in 2 years' time.
But I did notice of a different motion. The motion I would like to move, if it wasn't clear to you, Chair, was...
Sit down. Hold on. What's against? Show the hands, please.
Could I move, as I thought I'd moved, but obviously not heard by the General Manager, a report which is before the Council, which I said at the very beginning, and I actually moved that. One of the major pieces of work in this, of the 133,000, cutting back vegetation from footpaths and ditches, is one of the most major expenditures on this list. We need to get on, we need to listen to the residents, we need to do something, we don't need to prevaricate, we just need to get on and do it, Chair. Thank you.
Seconded.
There is no record. As much as I want the work to be done, there is actually no recommendation in the report that Councillor Danvers is moving. There is no recommendation to say spend this money. The report that you're moving, which you're effectively moving to note, just says these are items that need spending. There's no direct recommendation that says or commits the council to spend any money if you pass that report. My fear is you'll pass that tonight and officers will then say, oh, there's not been a clear recommendation to spend the money. I would like to see a recommendation before this council that clearly says you're going to spend that money, which is why I cannot support the recommendation you just moved.
The Councillor Danvers has moved that we accept the recommendations in this report, and I recommend or move that we note the content of this report, and having noted it, I give my commitment that this money will be spent. It will be spent promptly to do the works that are listed on this list.
Can I just suggest that I agree with Councillor Danvers, and if that money isn't spent, I'm sure the residents of Church Langley will be back here quite quickly telling us that the money hasn't been spent.
The point is we shouldn't have to come back
No,
every time.
And you won't.
You won't.
But if we
Expensive, yes, but we wouldn't be
Chair, if we fail to spend the money this time, I am sure they'll be back kicking and screaming again, and to right they should. So I agree with Councillor Danvers today, and we agree the report that is in front of it, and we agree to spend the money, and we'll move forward from here. I can't believe that Councillor Johnson is willing to block this today when we're saying that we are committed to spending the money. Thank you, Chair.
Point of personal clarification, Chair. I believe that Councillor Mullard had misunderstood me. I want us all to walk away here tonight and these residents to leave with a written commitment and a voted commitment that money will be spent. We've had fine words from councils over the past 8 years. Money's been taken, money's been put back. It is a point of clarification.
That's not a point of personal
I want
clarification.
to see the money definitively spent. Councillor Mullard is purposely misunderstanding and spinning this.
Now he's calling me a liar, Chair.
I hesitate to enter into this debate. However, With some interpretation, would it be best if the motion actually committed the council to spend this money? I think you've resolved the issue.
Yes.
So, Councillor Danvers, you're happy with that?
Yes, Chair. I think we've realised that we've got to the conclusion that table 1 is the, I think hopefully members of the public have got access to this. The list actually proposed works for 133,000. The fencing, the knee rails, the replanting, the safety drainage, the biodiversity, the playing field car park, what Simon refers to in terms of the drainage, the play area equipment replacement, the cutting back of vegetation from footpaths and dishes, and the land ownership project, so we can actually clear this up once and for all. This has been ongoing, Chair. The area has actually been represented by, I believe, most of the same people for something like nearly 20 years. And I think, because we've had our attention drawn to it recently, we've got on and done something, but I'm just surprised. They were in the driving seat for 4 years, I'm just surprised. They're suddenly getting very agitated about something that's perfectly straightforward. The residents brought it to our attention at the beginning of the year, the officers have gone away and done the work, and tonight's council meeting is the fruition of this. And I hope now that we will actually just get up, get on and do this work, Chair.
Just for clarification then, the motion is to note the report and to take the action, spend £133,400 set out in the report on the issues.
Agreed.
When does it start? And why are we spending £10,000 on diversity funds when we can't even walk the streets because we're falling down the holes to them?
Is that agreed? There's a motion.
Agreed.
Agreed.